Here we go. I'm recording again. So hello, this is Eric Lehman and welcome to this Monday's edition. Here we are, the first Monday following several world events that that have hit home more personally than ever before. Well, not than ever before, but just a lot of this world got really small and pretty scary at the same time. So I'll share a little bit more from the personal perspective, and that is I learned a few days ago that my brother was 5 cars. My biological brother was 5 cars behind the truck that eventually broke through the barriers in Nice, France, and took as many lives as it took, and it was a really it was a big moment. I mean, he could have been a car in front of the truck, and I may have been going to a funeral this weekend. And I mean, it's just, I guess that's the point, is like, you never know when your number is up. So, I guess the question is, how do we continue to live fully and in a fully expressed way, regardless of the decisions of others in a way, and also I feel like this coup in Turkey is another huge sign that, for lack of a better term, like that the game is changing, or that people want the game to change. And on a lighter but also interestingly serious note, the phenomenon that is Pokemon Go, which is now like a worldwide ongoing virtual and live event that is it's almost a perfect introduction into the world of what the Game Changer movement wants to see in the world. But it's also creating very interesting outcomes that I don't think anyone had intended. So there's just a lot to talk about today. So hi, Carol. I see you there. If you want to come and join, I just wanted to introduce. Yay, there you are. Let's see. Hello there. Wow, nice haircut. So how are you?
I'm good. My kids are frustrated because they can't play that game. They can't play it in certain areas yet. So they're
my kids are frustrated too, because apparently their phone doesn't accept upgrades to iOS 8 or iOS 8, which is what is necessary to engage with it. And so anyway, yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon. I don't know if you've heard, but people are falling off of different, kind of finding Pokemons and getting hit by cars, and other people are getting mugged because they're trying to find a Pokemon in a less than. So like, yeah, so there are all these unintended outcomes that in a way this sort of innocuous game is alluding to, and so like the question is like, what does it mean to send a whole bunch of people who are normally introverts, or not introverts, but like definitely in their house and like glued to their screen, and I mean, and then all of a sudden they're out and about in the world, which is one of the things we thought we wanted, right? And so and then how does it all manifest in the world, and is it okay that a certain amount of these outcomes are happening, and is there a liability, so like all these questions, I think it's like, it's almost, I'm just grateful in a way that the Pokemon Go came out before whatever the Game Changer movement wants to do, is out, so that we know more of what to look out for, as we do what we do in the world of technology. So, I'm really excited because I was just getting off a call with an artist who works with graphene named Frederick that you introduced me to, Carol, and he's got a business associate that can create virtual reality apps that are technologically more advanced than whatever Pokemon Go was about. So I mean, it's just everything's lining up, and what are the unforeseen outcomes to look out for, and then and then
it's true. It's like the texting, it's like driving a car. I mean, that's like a whole new thing. Before we used to just speak, and now people are like,
yeah. And I mean, like there's all these interesting workarounds like voice to text and all these other, technologies that are, kind of helpful technologies, if you will. So I mean, and then there's the real, I guess what we're also learning is like how many hours people are willing to chase around virtual objects,
true.
for nothing other than, Pokemon points. You know what I mean?
I witnessed that this weekend with a bunch of 60-year-olds because we went to a party for 15, 60-year-old people. And this one woman had her iPad and she just was playing the game the whole time. She did go for a hike, but when she got back, she was just on her thing and playing. Yeah,
and I mean, there's this book called it's escaping me right now, but it talks about all the ways, cognitive surplus, that's what it's called. And it talks about the thousands, if not billions of hours that we spend occupying our time when leaps in technology happen, so like when the first industrial revolution hit, there was this influx in gin consumption. So seriously, so I mean, like, it's just really interesting to take this in, and so in a way, what the book talks about is how, sort of television has replaced gin in some regard, and then, gaming has probably replaced television in some regard, so like
don't turn the TV on at all anymore.
Right. So, and I was just talking with a friend yesterday about like, when's the last time I actually watched a show when it was scheduled to be on? You know what I mean? Like, I think maybe the upcoming Olympics will, have me gravitate towards viewing a sport when it's actually on. And I think this, the soccer, watching Belgium play while I was in, Brussels was kind of a cool, real time event, but I mean, for the most part, we really have translated our lives into a virtual life, and we're in an on-demand world, and whenever we want to see an episode of Friends, which used to be like an 8:30 p.m. rallying moment on a Thursday night, now is just whenever we want it, so it's just a really interesting time because I feel that we've got billions of hours to redirect, and Pokemon Go is another beautiful exemplar of how people are willing. I mean, and it's also a potential, I mean, it brings people together, but it also allows them to numb, in a way. And, at the same time Pokemon Go is happening, like there's a coup in Turkey and there's a truck killing people in Nice, France, where you just were, Carol, and I mean, it's just, I guess the feeling is like, you do never know when it's your time, so, and like I was saying earlier, like my brother was 5 cars behind the truck rather than 2 cars in front, and 7 cars, makes the difference between whether I'm talking on this blab with you or, going to a funeral for, one of the 12 people in my life that, that really, really make up my heart's epicenter, and so, anyway, I mean, it's just, there's so much. I mean, like, energetically, it's just between like, talking about Pokemon Go and then like, what's the world going to look like tomorrow, and so I don't know what a lot of it, yeah.
Focusing on how do we stay safe? Why are we attracting all of this violence? What is it that's coming up to be healed? That's how I'm looking at this, but it's an issue of safety. Are we fearing it, and therefore it's being attracted? I mean, I'm coming from my metaphysical world, but I'm just curious what you would say to that.
Well, and I feel like this is where we're very similar, but maybe our lenses are a little bit different. Is that, and I've been thinking about this a lot. A few years back, I worked for US Air, before it turned into American Airlines, and I made 18 trips, which is like probably 30 plus flights, maybe probably 50 plus flights in 18 weeks, so I was very used to panning out, zooming out, and seeing the whole world as, a beautiful system and a beautiful being in and of itself. And I would look down, I would see bodies of water, and I would see, I would see lights, and I would see sort of like the nervous system of the planet, and I would see, like, I was just able to pan out, and like, from that distance, the world was this beautifully orchestrated, choreographed perfection, and then as I got closer to landing, I would see like all the garbage, all over the place, because like the airports like tend to fly over the least expensive, they tend to occupy the least expensive land. Usually they build on swamps and things like that. So, I learned from that perspective. And what I'm getting at is that I believe in a collective heart, mind, body, and soul. And I believe that that there are fissures, like when the skin of our collective body is ruptured by energy that is, coming in. I believe that, energy needs to be released and shift somewhere. So like, a few days ago, 3 police officers were killed in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. And so like, there's a big energy release, and the challenge is like, the powers that be, the government, have not taken accountability and asked for forgiveness, or, been, trying to make amends. We're trying to live in a business as usual way when we're not in a business as usual world. The world wants change, and, and so, yes, we're attracting it. Yes, it's here so that we can look at it. It's here so we can change a little bit. Not a little bit. It's here so we can evolve to the next step. And we're gonna have a special guest in a moment, a little kitty cat. But yes, I mean, we are. And this word "safe" that you use is a very interesting one for me, because like I don't necessarily, maybe I used to, but I don't aspire to be safe. I aspire to be expressed. I mean, if I die living my passion, so be it. But I mean, like you and I kind of shared this sentiment before, and maybe I'm babbling a little bit, but like, when the bombs went off in the Brussels airport and your daughter was 24 hours removed from that, being part of that experience. And I was 72 or whatever hours removed from that experience. So like, you know, it hit home, and the lesson in that for me and us from what we shared was that, you know, I don't fear dying as much as I fear not living, you know? So, and I feel like that's what energy is coming through me with all these events, is that like, yes, change gets to happen, and yes, we are part of that, and yes, we get to more fully embrace that and like just say yes, okay, like accept it, you know, this is what our duty is on, you know, on this planet, you know. And so I mean, I'm gonna kind of diverge a little bit, but you know, Martin Luther King talks about like, you know, there's not much, like, I mean, I butcher the quote, but it's just like, you know, the biggest concern that he had was people who saw bad things happening, and for them to do nothing was more harmful than any quote unquote evil doer doing something, you know? So, and I feel like that's the rallying cry. So yes, I mean, we are attracting it because it's time to shift. It's time to collaborate rather than compete, and to ask for forgiveness for wrongs that, you know, have happened. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I was engaged in a really beautiful conversation yesterday with my friend, and he said that like the way that the US kind of went into different areas in Iraq and like, you know, used drones to kill people, you know, without risking any human life, but like, you know, used an artificial, you know, object to take life and then to wreak havoc on civilians. You know, there's a cosmic price to pay for that in a way, and we're paying it, you know, and I guess that's, you know, I just said it, you know, like, and I think that's the point here, is like, we need to start saying things, taking accountability. Mm-hmm. and like Marianne Williamson said, you know, like Germany is an amazing example of like what it means to make amends. And the US still has so much arrogance, you know, and hasn't made amends for
American Indians.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it just like, you know, slavery, American Indians, like the way people are killed, you know, the way we go to war for, you know, for petroleum, you know, rather than, you know, I mean,
looking for alternatives that exist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I think what's underneath all of this is still, and this isn't really tangential, but it's still the belief that this planet can only sustain a certain number of people. You know, it's a scarcity mindset that we need to let go of, or else we're all going to perish. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, if we constantly pollute this planet, making it less, you know, sustainable every day, and then, you know, like we're recreating this whole bubble of energy that is like, we're done with it. Like, you know, we now know that we can easily support and feed every person on this planet to their full satiation point, you know, and yet people starve every day. People lose their lives because they don't have enough food where they are. And the problem is not food supply. The problem is access, and it's always been access. And, you know, so it's so weird. On the flip side, you know, we've spoken about this before, is just regular conversation. Like a drone in and of itself is not a bad thing. You know, it could be used to kill, and it can also be used to get medical supplies and food supplies to areas that need it the most, that aren't getting supplied because there's so much corruption blocking the roads, you know? So literally, you know, drones can be the answer as well as, you know, the enemy, you know. And so, like, I mean, I'm on a little rant, so I'll just but I mean, there's this artistic view of heaven and hell, you know, and it's the same exact scene, you know. So, like, you know, the view of hell that people go to is like this huge banquet, you know, with people who are, you know, as you zoom in, like, people have these sour expressions on their face, and they're so, like, they're almost emaciated looking. And you see this huge banquet of any kind of food that you could possibly ever eat. And then you zoom in even further, and then you realize that the utensils that they have to eat with are longer than their arms, you know, so they can't physically bring the food to their mouths. So then heaven is the same exact scene with the same exact utensils, but instead of sour looks on each other's face, they're just feeding each other. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And, like, I'm, like, getting goosebumps right now just thinking about that, you know. And that's the banquet that we need to transition to, and that we get to transition to. And it's not about competing. It's not about feeding ourselves. I mean, like, and that's the interesting thing, because in the coachy world, you know, everyone talks about putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first. And then I'm like, you know, like, it's not that. It's like, you know, feed someone else and feel fed, you know, like, you know, I mean, in a way, like, that's the next transition, you know, like, trusting yourself, trusting the universe to know that you're going to be nourished, you know, by something outside of your own control. Like, and that's a big leap for many people, you know. So I guess people would rather, you know, figure out their own oxygen mask and, you know, have a sour puss on their face, you know, and create hell on earth, you know, by thinking that they need to do it all themselves, or, you know, lean into the cradle that is really here for us. So I don't know, that's energetically where I am. And, like, yes, we're attracting all this, and it's here for a reason, you know. And you know, without value judgment, you know, I'm sad about all the lives that have been lost on both the coup and the truck incident in Nice. And I would be even more sad if we did nothing, you know, besides go to a few funerals. You know what I mean? So, like, I know that it's our job to be more engaged in whatever our life's mission is, you know, because that's what we're here to do. And you know, I've been in this really active conversation with people who are reacting to the video endorsement Robert Murray Smith did for the Game Changer movement. And, you know, there are people who, you know, are in agreement, they're in support. Other people are, you know, are holding on to their video games for dear life. You know, like, there's so many different conversations that I'm in, but we're in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if, you know, we're only talking with the people who support the Game Changer movement. You know, we're in the conversation. And I guess that's the other point, is, like, we just need to start talking more, like, connecting more, you know, and instead of necessarily looking for the next Pokemon, you know, we have a choice. We can engage in conversation, or we can be face down in our screen and look for another Pokemon, you know. And, you know, it's a huge analogy, you know, like, we definitely are in a time of choice, you know, and many of us don't think we are, but we have choice, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, it's so great talking with you with your perspective, because, I mean, like, you know, there's so many different, I mean, you have a global experience. You have, you know, what it's like to be in Europe, and the fact that, you know, you were just in Nice, and you were feeling unnerved, like, you were feeling the energy of that event before it happened. You know what I mean? And so tell me more about this safe feeling, because, like, that's a new word from you?
Well, I don't feel it's personal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the world doesn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, we're experiencing these things that have unfortunately been not safe for many people.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could focus on feeling, security in spaces and places, and feeling harmony, maybe that energetic vibe would shift.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's in paranoid fear, and they're fearing for their safety. And
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to me that in certain parts of the world, some things go unnoticed and don't get that much media coverage, and then in other places, it's huge.
Say more. Like, I mean,
that it's just in my view that there's a bit of certain lives are worth more, or some kind of a scale that the media uses that I feel is not a just view. It's sad, and I don't understand, how we can just, I don't know. There's so many things that go on in Africa or other places every day that go unreported. And
oh, sure. And I mean, like, even like a tsunami hitting, a highly populated, area, those lives seem to be different than U.S. lives. If two U.S. lives are lost, in Nice, that's what gets reported, and we get this expose on what that family was like, and like it was a man and two children, how awful, and yes, it was awful, and like thousands of people are dying in Syria, thousands, and and a similar sort of terrorist event happened where, in Iraq, or somewhere,
right, in Iraq. Yes, there was a car bomb.
Yeah, and like, for some reason, people were so willing to put the flag of France on their Facebook face, but not so much with Iraq, and what is solidarity? Like, what does it mean to like care about, to be a humanist rather than caring what country someone comes from? Like, if a life is lost in a way that is sad in the States, it should matter just as much as a life that's lost in that way in Iraq, and it does sadden me to know that that lives are listed or ranked or prioritized, based on nationality, kind of like the randomness of where you were born or how you were born, or what have you. I mean, like, the people in Iraq, they're just doing the best they can with what their scene is. And I mean, the people in Ethiopia, are, yeah. So, I mean, I don't want this energy to be heavy, and in a way, if we did nothing, it would be heavy.
Yeah, we need to make a conscious effort to raise awareness, to harmonize and really live it.
So what does that look like? I mean, like, how does, I feel, yeah, go ahead.
For me, it's a question of trusting that, there is a force, there is a greater force that, as Joe Dispenza, as we saw, speaks about, if you can tap into and trust and be in a state of attracting what you want rather than what you don't want, you usually do attract that. Law of attraction. And if you have constant worries, you may call in what you don't want.
Sure. Well, and I think on a larger level, and not that I want to get all conspiracy like, but it's just like, part of me feels like some of this stuff is happening because people want it to happen. You know what I mean? Like a lot of
control.
Yeah. I mean, so like, I don't believe we need as much government as we currently have. However, if now there's this us and them that needs to be controlled, you know, then we need a government. You know what I mean? So in a way, like, laws of attraction are working in so many different ways right now. So I mean, there are people who I think want to hold on to their control of resources and the status quo, you know, and they're not, you know, in a way, they're happy about all this unrest, because then people will lean on government and government agencies to say, hey, help us, you know, we can't do this ourselves, you know. And you and I both know we can. Like, we can, you know, we can project the life and the energy and all of it, you know, like, into the future and create it. And when we all do that, when each of us take personal accountability for our own personal outcomes, like if someone who was playing Pokemon Go said, oh wait, maybe I should look before I enter a road, you know, even though there's a really cool Pokemon right there, you know, maybe I won't get hit by a car, you know, maybe I should pause, maybe I should take a deep breath and create, you know, that the sense of safety or the sense of peace, which I think is more, you know, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is people don't feel at peace, you know, and safety is somewhere on that, you know, continuum, but it's just like they don't, and not many people are applauded for being their own person. I mean, you've got personal experience where, like, you know, every time you try to be yourself, like, there's someone there who's like, no, you know, and you know, I've experienced a lot of the same things, and you know, it's really interesting, because like there's a process of like breaking away from that energy and saying, okay, I hear that you don't want me to fully express, you know, who I really am, and this is where I'm at choice, and this is where I'm going to do, you know, what I'm here to do, you know. So it's but then on the flip side, you know, like people went out to Nice to celebrate Bastille Day, like a beautiful, beautiful day, and I would never want them not to make that choice. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, and so like, so this is the other interesting challenge, is that, like, you know, back in the times of like the Holocaust, you know, people were hiding their faith, you know, so that they didn't get killed. And I'm saddened because I think some of that same energy is still here. Like, you know, I mean, Judaism is so much about joy and celebration, and you know, so like, you know, when the Holocaust was happening, people were like not expressing, you know, who they were, or, you know, when the Russian pogroms were happening, you know, like people were, you know, they needed lookouts while they were in celebration mode. And like, I'm scared or saddened to think that we might actually need to go back to that mode. Like, oh wait, we're going to have a celebration, we need guards, you know.
It's already like that here in Europe, I'll tell you.
Wow.
We're living it every day here in Brussels. We have guards everywhere now.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter, she's speaking about going out on the weekend with friends to a dancing club in Brussels, and my heart is a little bit like, oh, you know, and I said to myself, you know, don't go to that feeling, have her, you know, understand that she needs to be aware and look at the exits and whatever. I mean, it's just a new game, and hopefully it's going to change, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I feel like that's the whole point of even parenting. Like, my daughter recently got injured in a way that could really impact her dancing forever, and she, but she was doing something that she loved, so like, there's no way I would tell her don't dance in fear of getting injured. She slipped on sweat and may have torn a tendon, and it wasn't in a dance club. It was just, dancing, like at her dance studio. But it's just like, I guess the point with that is that it may not even be gun violence that hurts you. You know what I mean? It may not be what happened in Orlando that so, it is time, with whatever time we have left on this planet, to fully express, what we're here to do and be. And whether it means dancing at a dance club, to be 16 in the world. I mean, a lot of our children just turned 16. So that's, it's a really exciting time. And I guess 16 gives kids access in Europe to things that it takes until you're 18 or 21 to be able to do in the States. But still, it's a really cool time, so, and I think that's the other challenge as parents, is like, we don't get to overlay our fears on the next generation. Like, and so like, how do we transition to real abundance, and to like this understanding that we are here to shine our light and radiate it. And we're also here to get out of our kids' way, So, yeah, it's a new time to be a new parent, So, and I guess that's the other thing, to be a game changer, you don't need to go out and like, go to Nice and, be there. You can just change your local lens and how you show up in the world, in your own world. You don't need to travel the globe to address all of this. You can shift your lenses and start really understanding that we are totally a choice, and on the flip side, if we choose to do nothing, then that's when terrorism wins. That's when fear wins out over abundance and joy and bliss. And I don't want to live in that world. So I'm going to co-create a world that allows and makes room for bliss, and makes room for dance, and makes room for, gaming in a way that proactively loves this planet, and so like, you and I haven't spoken for like, I don't know, 8 hours or whatever, but it's been a very powerful 8 hours, and or maybe more than 8 hours. Anyway, but like, I woke up and I said, like, we really have a huge opportunity to create a game, that really does shift this energy, and we can focus on lots of different challenges, and so and we're doing it. Like, and I think that's the cool thing, is like, it's just, there are times where, because I'm, sort of a recovering activist, like, and what I mean by a recovering activist, I mean, like, I sort of want to be done with homelessness. I want to be done with poverty. I want to work on different, not larger problems, but I want, I don't understand why there's still homelessness. I don't understand why there's still poverty. And, but in a way now I sort of do, because like, we all have those two different images of heaven and hell, and we've been choosing to look at our utensils as too long to feed ourselves, and what I really want is for people to look at the world, as an opportunity to feed each other, And, you know, it's a certain amount of trust that we don't yet have. So like, how do we build that trust, you know? And part of that is in the gaming world, you know, like admitting that we can't necessarily solve any full mission on our own, but with a few hundred, a few thousand, a few million people playing the same game, maybe we can accomplish something amazing. So I don't know, what's going on in your heart?
It's everything you're saying is what I believe in too, and so I'm excited to see some changes happen and something shift, because we know we can.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what I love about what you said is, in bringing up Joe Dispenza, is that, like, you know, that I went to a seminar a few years ago, and one of the most compelling, I think it was one of the Gandhis who was speaking, and they said the most important thing is to feel peace first, you know, because if you can feel peace, that's the only way to create peace. You know, if you can't feel peace in and of yourself, then, you know, there's no reason to ask it for anyone else, you know, from anyone else. So I think that's where the oxygen mask thing works for me, is that, like, if I can feel peace, you know, if I can look at my stuff and just say, oh, wow, like, that's all mine. Like, even though I see it in someone else, like, or I want someone else to change to make me feel better. Like, no, like, I'm not at peace, and, like, that's no one else's fault but mine, you know, or responsibility but mine. And so, and I don't know, you know, what, you know, I mean, like, how I would love to find a way to talk to some people in ISIS, you know what I mean? Like, in a way, like, I don't know how to do it. Like, all I know is that if I could, just as someone born coincidentally, randomly or whatever, or intentionally in the States, like, I would love to be able to apologize for how we've been acting, you know, and to say that the way the US went about taking life, you know, is sad, and it's heartless, and it's impersonal, you know, in a weird way. You know, the US doesn't have a defense for anyone who is willing to take their own lives to kill more people. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean,
That's huge. Yeah.
Big, you know, but the truth is, like, you know, if I was as bold in love as other people are in hate, you know, that's the answer right there. And that's my commitment. And that's why I'm, like, emoting, you know, like, I'm ready, you know, and it's just like, I love these Mondays with you, because, like, we can, like, really just get underneath what any of these events, you know, were on the surface, and we can just say, you know, what really needs to change is the, you know, the energy that makes someone want to pull a trigger, or that makes someone want to drive a truck through, you know, a crowd.
Totally.
And it is possible. It is a choice. And, you know, and it's time to, like, to really evolve and take ownership of, you know, how, I mean, as an American, like, you know, how we declare war for resources, you know, and yet we haven't realized that people declared war on us for our way of showing up in the world, you know. So, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to admit that we're at war, you know, or admit that someone has declared war on us, but also not to respond by declaring war on them, you know, because, like, my deep personal belief is to make sure that there is no us in them, you know, that I can look inside the heart of someone who thought that they wanted to kill me, you know, because I represent everything that they despise. And, you know, and to say I love you, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm here to do. And wherever I am, you know. So I don't know, like I'm really so grateful that we got to see Joe Dispenza, and that it was reinforced that that we do get to create our own realities if we choose, you know. It's also a discipline, you know. I mean, I watched a video of him, and maybe we can lighten the scene by not talking about like murder or, you know, like trucks exploding or whatever. But he spoke about, like, if you have this belief that going to your mother-in-law's is going to be an awful experience, you know, it will be. But you can train it. You can train, and he used the example. I'm not personalizing it, so
it's quite funny for me.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, but he said you can actually train yourself away from that belief and that experience, you know, and so energetically, we can pause, we can breathe, we can visualize experiences, you know, being way better. Well, what I love about him is that Joe Dispenza talks about it being the discipline of laws of attraction, and the, you know, the discipline of controlling your experience. And, you know, he's like, you're not going to get there by just meditating once, you know. You need the ritual, you know, and, you know, for 20 days, 30 days, 100 days in advance of your next mother-in-law interaction, you can change that energy. And you know, it's really amazing that we all have that power, and we all don't tap into it, you know, as much as we could. So so that's my commitment. You know, my commitment is to you know, really get more into ritual, you know, and to like feel peace every day, you know, and to not hold anyone else accountable for my feeling of peace and safety, you know. And yeah, I'll use the word safety, which is new for me to incorporate. But what do you want to do, Carol? Like, what do you feel like your ritual can be? Or, you know, I mean, here we are in a nice full moon, you know, what shifts do you want?
So definitely is the monkey mind, you know, really observing it. And
say more, I mean, because, like, you know, people.
Okay, so the monkey mind would, I would say, I feel peaceful today. And no, you don't. You know, you could go to Brussels today and get blown up, or, you know, you better look around, and instead of just really feeling peaceful. So there's this mind that that can wreak havoc and make you attract things that you really don't want. So for me, it's mind control. It's controlling, and knowing it's just the mind, and that I am bigger than that, and that the space from where the observer that observes the mind comes from is totally peaceful, and it's infinite. So that's what I'm starting to do every day. Is like, okay, what are the words I'm saying? What am I feeling? And you know, if I feel frustration, okay, that's frustration. Do I go further with it, or do I step back and let it go? So that's what I'm doing these days.
Mm-hmm. I think that's amazing, and I feel like this is where, you know, we get to look at these things that reinforce the monkey mind, you know, and I think it's one of my most, you know, primal observations with the Game Changer movement, is that violent video games reinforce the monkey mind in such a huge way, so invisible but visible, you know. And I feel like this is, you know, this is why, you know, I and you are uniquely qualified for this. I mean, you know, I'll own my history in that, like, I witnessed real life violence really early in my life, and so when these games started coming out, like, there was just something in my whole body that said, why would someone package that and put it into living rooms and bedrooms in households that didn't have violence in it. Like, I just didn't get it, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden this light bulb went off that said, oh, well, if I'm trying to maintain the scarcity and the fear-based mindset, and if I'm trying to market to people, you know, it's easier to market to people living in fear than to market to people living in abundance, you know, and, you know, fear and like, you know, when you're in love, you don't really need much. You know, it's really amazing how little you need when you are living a world of love. You know, like you go into the woods, whether they're your woods or someone else's, and you feel the abundance of the entire universe. You know what I mean? But when you're in fear and you're in scarcity, you're like, these need to be my woods, you know, and like, you know, I don't want anyone else coming onto my woods, you know, who's trespassing, you know. And so it's a very interesting place that we're in. So like, you know, video games and media, you know, are really, you know, you turn on the news, you see all these stories, and then you see who pays for the news, and it's pharmaceutical companies.
And others, yeah.
Yeah.
Including our dear friend Donald Trump. And I saw an interesting thing tonight. It was Fareed Zakaria came out and explained that he is a Muslim. He's not practicing, and he was raised Muslim, and he's an American. And he was, you know, speaking about the generalisms that Trump has been, you know, putting out and generalizing and stereotyping and everything. And it was really, it was just a very humbling verification that we tend to stereotype and, how do you call that when you like when they look for someone? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you mean like when like in the airport security or
yes, profiling, or I don't know how you say it.
Racial profiling. Right.
Yeah. But
well, yeah. Okay. Same one.
He was speaking about how there's just so many beautiful Muslim people, and this is just ridiculous that you know, people would lump them all into one, you know, when there's just a few extremists doing some weird shit, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because I was driving with my kids this morning or this early afternoon, and we were talking about like the world events that, sadly or not, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do with kids that, you know, of these ages, because I was telling them about the world events and telling them that, you know, their Uncle Alex was, you know, 5 cars behind this truck and all these different things. And, you know, we got on the subject of, you know, ISIS versus Muslim, you know, or Islam. And like, you know, that there's still, you know, we do overgeneralize until we actually meet people, you know, like until we actually see them eye to eye and heart to heart. And we can say, you know what, I see the God in you. And but I think the flip side is like we got into this conversation and I said, well, I'm Jewish, but no one would look at me and say I'm Jewish, but anyone could look at a Hasid, you know, and say that's a Hasid, you know. And, you know, so like someone who is a Hasidic Jew has a very different belief system, and many Jews, you know, look at those who are Hasidic, you know, as almost different, you know what I mean? As almost a whole different way of life, you know? And I'm not saying, you know, to put it on par with being Islam versus ISIS, but I'm just saying that, you know, in a way, some of the practices that are known in the Hasidic community would not necessarily be practices that any other Jewish person would want generalized onto them, you know. So, but it's just a very, you know, and by extension, it's sort of an interesting argument that, you know, a lot of people, when they saw the endorsement of the game changer movement, you know, that Robert Murray Smith did, you know, they're like, you know, there's been so much research that says that violent video games don't make people more violent or aggressive. And, you know, we're not necessarily talking about a general population. We're talking about a certain set of people.
Right.
Who
does
can,
affect.
you know, who can be radicalized, and, you know, the training that they're getting from these video games is invisible rather than going to a shooting range. You know, we would know who to look out for, you know, if we would just track the number of hours spent at a shooting range. But people can log thousands, if not millions of hours in Call of Duty and train, you know, for these acts of violence in ways that, you know, aren't as tracked as, you know, physically going to a shooting range, you know. So, I mean, now we see who all is engaging in the world in gaming by the presence of this Pokemon Go thing, you know. Like, the streets are filled. Like, the Ithaca Commons the other night was just like totally alive. Were they out dancing? No. They were they were looking for Pokemons, you know. And there were tons of people that I've been in this community for decades, and these are brand new people that have never seen the light of the Ithaca Commons before in their lives, you know. And they were having a virtual experience in real space. So I guess the point that I'm making with all this stuff is that, like, you know, it's time to look into people's hearts and not generalize at all, you know. And how do we do that? You know, how do we make that choice? You know, whenever we hear someone gossiping about a group of people, or making stereotypes, or making generalizations, or, I mean, I'll be really transparent, you know, like, when the morning that we learned about the bombs going off in Brussels, like, I was racially profiling, you know. I looked at anyone of Arab descent differently, and I was in fear, and terrorism was working in a way, you know, because it had me uncharacteristically participating in practices that I never thought I would participate in. You know what I mean? And I admit that, you know, I mean, like, and so I think part of it is saying, like, is that my mucky mind? You know, what is that? You know, and can I look at that and, you know, is this person out to get me? And maybe the next time, you know, we walk those streets, you know, maybe I can go up to a person and, like, you know, I mean, I don't know, you've seen all these things, you know, like free hugs, you know, there are people, you know, going around, like, hugging police officers and taking video of it, you know, so that the world can see that people can still hug each other after, you know, these events. So, yeah, it's really whatever world we want to create. And so, but yeah, I mean, I'm in a way grateful for this Brexit thing, because I think, you know, because of the Brexit, people will understand that, you know, if you vote for change for change's sake, you might wake up the next morning in a world that you don't necessarily want, you know, based on just change for the sake of change rather than change with, you know, thought, you know. So, and it would be scary to think that people want change that allows stereotyping to happen. I don't know what I'm gonna do if Donald Trump gets elected. You know, I hope I don't have to face that reality. But, like, if I'm choosing to live in a country that has that sort of representation as a figurehead, you know, what does that mean? Like, what does that say about my understanding of choice? You know, so anyway, so here we are an hour in, and maybe we should, probably close up shop for today. But I really appreciate you and your perspective, and just and really having your female heart. I feel like it would be, it's amazing that you've transformed as much as, because like the feminine represents like care about Mother Earth and family and the homestead, and to be able to let go, and to let your daughter have her own experience, and if she is part of a crowd that that needs to express by dancing, she should dance. Like that's what there is to do. And so and then all we can do is just wish the best energy for them. And that's it. That's our job as parents, is to get out of our kids' ways and let them be who they need to grow up to be. And hopefully they'll reciprocate and let us be who we're supposed to be too. But yeah, it's a really exciting time. So yeah, I'm grateful that you're on board with this, and I'm excited in a way that we get to be about the Game Changer movement as all this stuff is happening in the world, because it does feel like, it feels like the bat signal. It does feel like time to be part of a change in a way of being, change in an understanding of choice. And I'm excited to walk that walk with you. So, yay. Yeah. So why don't we sign off for now, and we'll see everyone next week. Bye. Bye-bye.